The last thing I felt was my own hand, reaching back into the darkness for a life that had never once reached for me. It closed on nothing. My name is Arya, and I was the sacrifice. They dressed me in white, walked me up the mountain, and left me to die at the feet of a monster. The gate closed behind me. The wind tore through my gown. And when I turned around, he was there, the Lycan King. Ancient, silver-eyed, carved from shadow and silence. I waited for my death. Every girl before me had died here, frozen and forgotten. That he just stood there, staring. Then he moved closer. Close enough that I felt the heat of him. Close enough that I saw something flicker in those cold silver eyes. Something that looked almost human. His hand touched my chin. His voice, when it came, was softer than it had any right to be. "What is your name?" 3 words. That's all it took. Because in that moment, I understood the truth that would either save me or destroy me. The king wasn't looking for a sacrifice. He was looking for someone to finally see him. And I had just looked him right in the eye. Below him are the Alphas, who rule their own territories with iron fists. And below them is the pack structure Betas, Deltas, warriors, and at the very bottom, the Omega. That's the lowest rank. The one nobody wants. The one who eats last, sleeps in the worst place, and is the first to be sacrificed for the good of the pack. That's where Arya found herself. For generations, our pack had paid a blood tithe to the Lycan King. A life for his protection. It was an old custom, a dark one, but it kept the rogues away and the borders strong. Every few years a name was called, and once a name was called, there was no appeal. No mercy. You were washed, dressed in white, and sent up the mountain to his castle. You never came back down. When the elders called my name, I felt the world tilt. I was 17. My parents had died in the last rogue war, leaving me with nothing but their old cottage and their low status. I had no powerful family to speak for me, no warrior bloodline to protect me. I was just Arya, the quiet one, the one who always looked down. The night before the procession, I sat in the corner of the pack hall while the others celebrated. They drank and laughed, relieved it was me and not them. I watched the young woman clutch her mate's arm, her eyes shining with love and gratitude that he was safe. I saw a mother hold her child a little tighter, whispering thanks to the moon. They were happy. My death meant they got to live. That's the thing about being low rank. You learn that your life doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to the pack. And the pack had decided it was time to cash it in. The only person who even looked at me was an old woman named Marta. She was a half-blind elder, someone they kept around for her knowledge of herbs, not for fighting. She hobbled over to me, her joints cracking, and sat down heavily on the bench beside me. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared into the fire, her cloudy eyes reflecting the flames. Finally, she spoke, her voice a dry rasp. "They think he's a monster, girl. They think he drinks blood and tears souls apart." She cackled, a low, wet sound. "Maybe he does. But a monster is still just a creature. And creatures, they can be reached." I looked at her, desperate for any sliver of hope. "What do you mean?" She turned her head toward me, and even though I knew she couldn't see me, I felt like those milky eyes were piercing right through my skin. "I mean, don't go up that mountain as a sacrifice, girl. Go up there as a woman. Look him in the eye. Not in defiance, not in fear. Just look." She patted my hand with her papery thin one. The moon works in strange ways. Sometimes the lamb is exactly what the lion needs. I didn't understand her then. I thought she was just a crazy old woman, telling fairy tales to comfort a dead girl walking. I nodded, thanked her, and went back to staring at the floor. The next morning, they came for me before dawn. They dressed me in a thin white gown that did nothing against the biting mountain wind. They draped a plain wool cloak over my shoulders and put rough leather sandals on my feet. I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye to the place I'd grown up. I just walked, flanked by two stone-faced warriors, out of the village and up the path that led into the dark pines. The higher I climbed, the colder it got. The air grew thin and sharp in my lungs. The cheerful songs of the village birds faded, replaced by the heavy silence of the deep woods. It felt like the mountain itself was holding its breath. The trees grew twisted and ancient, their branches clawing at the grey sky. I thought about running. My legs ached to just bolt into the trees and disappear. But where would I go? The warriors behind me would hunt me down. And even if I somehow escaped them, the rogues beyond the border would find me. There was no place for an Omega girl on her own. The world wasn't built for us. So I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, up towards the end. After hours of climbing, the trees finally thinned out, and I saw it. The castle. It wasn't a grand, gleaming palace like in the human stories. It was a fortress of dark, jagged stone, jutting out of the mountainside like a broken tooth. It had no windows I could see, just high, sheer walls and one massive iron gate. It looked less like a home and more like a wound in the world. The gate groaned open as we approached, as if pulled by invisible hands. The warriors stopped. They wouldn't look at me. One of them just jerked his head toward the opening. Go. I stepped forward, my sandals crunching on the frozen gravel. The moment I passed through the gate, it slammed shut behind me with a deafening clang that echoed off the stone. I was inside. I was alone. The courtyard was empty. No guards, no servants. No sound at all except for the wind whistling through the battlements. In the center was a single bare tree, its branches white with frost. I stood there, shivering, waiting for something to happen. For a monster to leap out of the shadows and end it. But nothing moved. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes? An hour. The cold was starting to seep past my cloak into my bones. My feet were numb. Just as I thought I might simply freeze to death right there, a door at the far end of the courtyard opened. A man stepped out. He wasn't what I expected. He wasn't a hulking beast or a twisted demon. He was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen, with broad shoulders and a body that moved with a predator's lethal grace. He wore simple black clothes, a tunic and trousers, leather boots. His hair was dark, almost black, and fell just past his ears. His face was all sharp angles and hard planes, a face carved from the same stone as his castle. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. They weren't brown or blue, or even the gold I'd heard some wolves had. They were silver, pure, molten silver, glowing faintly in the dim light. They were the eyes of something ancient, something powerful, something that had seen centuries of blood and sacrifice. He walked toward me, his steps silent on the stone. I should have been terrified. I should have dropped to my knees, begged for mercy, or just closed my eyes and waited for the end. Every instinct, every lesson of the pack, screamed at me to submit. He was the alpha of all alphas. The king. I was nothing. And then, Marta's voice floated through my mind, as clear as if she was standing beside me. Look him in the eye. I don't know where I found the courage. Maybe it was the cold, numbing my fear. Maybe it was the knowledge that I was going to die anyway. Whatever it was, I lifted my chin. I ignored the screaming of my wolf, the part of me that wanted to roll over and show its throat. And I looked him right in those glowing silver eyes. He stopped. About 10 feet away from me, he just stopped walking and stood there, staring at me. Not with anger, not with hunger, but with something I couldn't name. Shock maybe, confusion. The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. The wind died down, as if the mountain itself was waiting to see what would happen. Then he spoke. His voice was low, a deep rumble that I felt in my chest. It wasn't the roar of a beast. It was the quiet command of a king. "What is your name?" I opened my mouth and my voice came out as a whisper. "Arya." He tilted his head. A very slight, very human gesture. "Arya," he repeated, as if tasting the word. He took another step closer, and I could smell him then cold air, pine and something else, something wild and smoky. "Do you know why you're here, Arya?" I nodded, my throat too tight for words. "They sent you to die," he said, his voice flat. "To pay a debt. They dressed you in white and walked you up my mountain, and they went home to their warm fires." Another step. He was close enough now that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. "Tell me," he murmured, his eyes searching mine. "Do you want to die?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. Not told me what my duty was. Not explained why my life was a fair price. Asked me. I thought about my cold, empty cottage. I thought about the years of being invisible, of eating scraps, of never being chosen for anything except this. I thought about the laughter in the pack hall last night. And for the first time, I felt something other than fear. I felt anger. A tiny, hot spark of it right in the center of my chest. "No," I whispered. The word was barely audible, but it was the truest thing I'd ever said. He stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. I braced myself for him to laugh, to strike me down, to prove Marta wrong and show me that a monster was all he was. But instead, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, not quite. Just a flicker. He reached out, and I flinched. But his hand didn't grab my throat. His fingers, warm and surprisingly gentle, touched my chin. He tilted my face up a little more, studying me like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. "Neither do I," he said softly. And then he turned, walked back toward the door, and was gone, leaving me standing alone in the freezing courtyard, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The door didn't open again. No one came. The wind picked back up, biting through my thin gown. I didn't know what had just happened. I didn't know if I'd been spared, or if this was some cruel game. All I knew was that I was still alive, and that for the first time, the Lycan King hadn't taken his sacrifice. He had asked her name. Part 2. The prisoner in the tower. I don't know how long I stood in that courtyard after he left. The sun, what little of it there was, started to sink behind the mountain peaks, and the cold became a living thing, clawing at my skin. My teeth were chattering so hard, I thought they might shatter. Just when I was sure I would collapse, a small, hunched figure emerged from the same door the king had used. It was an old woman, older than Marta, with skin like wrinkled parchment and hair as white as snow. She moved slowly, carefully, but her eyes were sharp and black as she looked me up and down. She clicked her tongue against her teeth, a sound of disapproval. "Foolish girl," she muttered, not unkindly. "Standing out here like a frozen rabbit. Come along." She turned and shuffled back through the door, not waiting to see if I would follow. I did. I was too cold and too confused to do anything else. She led me through a labyrinth of dark stone corridors. There were no torches, no candles, but the walls themselves seemed to emit a faint, silvery glow, just enough to see by. It was eerily quiet. No footsteps but ours, no voices, no sounds of life at all. It was like walking through a tomb. Finally, she stopped at a heavy wooden door, pushed it open and ushered me inside. The room was small but warm. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. There was a bed with thick furs, a wooden tub, a pitcher of water, and a tray of food bread, cheese, and a steaming bowl of stew. "Eat, bathe, sleep," the old woman commanded. "The king will send for you when he is ready." I stared at the food, my mouth watering. Is this for me? She gave me another long, unreadable look. You are the first one he has ever brought inside, child. The first one he has ever spoken to. Do not ask me why. The king's mind is his own. She paused at the door. My name is Alara. I tend to this place. If you need anything, you will not find it. This is not a place of comfort. It is a place of waiting. And with that, she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I didn't hear a key turn in the lock. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was a prisoner. But I was a warm prisoner. A fed prisoner. I ate like I hadn't eaten in years. The stew was rich with meat and root vegetables, and the bread was still soft. I couldn't remember the last time I'd had a meal this good. After I'd cleaned the bowl with the last crust of bread, I peeled off the ridiculous white gown and sank into the tub. The water was hot, almost too hot, and it stung my frozen skin back to life. I scrubbed the dirt of the mountain path from my body, and the last traces of my old life from my mind. When I finally crawled into the bed, buried myself under the furs, and let the warmth soak into my aching muscles, a single thought circled in my head before sleep claimed me. Why? Why am I here? Why did he ask my name? Why didn't he just kill me? Days passed, or maybe it was weeks. Time moved differently in that stone tower. There were no windows in my room, no way to tell night from day. Alara would come with food, with fresh water, with clean clothes, simple, woolen dresses that were warmer and finer than anything I'd ever owned. She never spoke unless I asked a question, and even then her answers were short and cryptic. Has the king ever done this before? I asked one day. No. Does he know I'm still here? He knows everything that happens in his castle. When will he see me? When he is ready. And that was all. The isolation was maddening at first. I was used to being alone, but I was also used to the noise of the pack, the comings and goings, the arguments, the laughter, the howling at the moon. Here, there was nothing but silence. I talked to myself just to hear a voice. I paced the room until I knew every stone. I traced the patterns in the wood grain of the door 1,000 times. But slowly, something shifted inside me. The constant fear, the knot of dread in my stomach began to loosen. There were no threats here. No one hurt me. No one demanded anything from me. For the first time in my life, I had no role to play. I wasn't the Amiga, wasn't the sacrifice, wasn't anyone at all. I was just a girl in a room. It was terrifying in its own way. If I wasn't those things, who was I? One night I assumed it was night. Though I couldn't be sure, I woke with a start. The fire had died to embers and the room was dark. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. A presence in the shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat up slowly, clutching the furs to my chest. Who's there? Silence. Then a soft sound. A breath. The embers flared slightly, casting a faint red glow, and I saw him. The king. He was sitting in the wooden chair by the cold hearth, watching me. His silver eyes glowed in the dim light, unblinking. I should have screamed. I should have called for Alara. But I just stared back at him, my breath coming in shallow gasps. You sleep deeply, he said. His voice a low rumble in the darkness. I have been here for an hour. An hour. He had been watching me sleep for an hour. Why? The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. He didn't answer right away. He just continued to study me, his gaze traveling slowly over my face, my hair spilling over the pillow, my hands gripping the furs. It wasn't a hungry look. It was curious, wondering. I don't know, he finally said, and he sounded almost surprised by his own words. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since you arrived. My pulse, which had started to slow, spiked again. Thinking about me? You looked at me, he said, as if that explained everything. No one looks at me. Not for centuries. They look at the floor, at my feet, at the wall behind me. They beg, they weep, they curse. But they never look at me. You did. I remembered Marta's words. Look him in the eye. I had done it because a crazy old woman told me to. I had no idea it would mean anything. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, I whispered. For the first time, I saw his lips curve into something that was almost a smile. It was a small thing, barely there, but it transformed his harsh face, softening the hard angles just for a moment. No, he agreed. I don't suppose you did. He stood up and I tensed. But he didn't move toward the bed. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the latch. What is it like? He asked, not turning around. Down there, in the pack. What is it like to be among them? I thought about it. The cold shoulder, the empty seat, the whispers that stopped when I entered a room. Lonely, I said honestly. It's lonely even when you're surrounded by people. He was silent for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, he said, Yes, it is. And then he was gone. I lay back against the pillows, my mind reeling. He had come to my room in the middle of the night just to tell me he couldn't stop thinking about me. The Lycan King, the most powerful creature in the world. And he was lonely too. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of him. That was the moment I started to see him not as a monster, but as a man. A man trapped in a castle of stone and silence, just as surely as I was trapped in this room. The next day, when Elara brought my food, I asked her a question she didn't expect. What's his name? She froze, the tray halfway to the table. Her black eyes snapped to mine, sharp with warning. You do not ask that. Why not? Because it is not permitted. He is the king. He has no name. He is only the king. I thought about that. About living for centuries without anyone speaking your name. Without anyone looking you in the eye. Without anyone seeing you as anything but a title, a duty, a monster. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, I said. Elara set the tray down slowly, her wrinkled face unreadable. For a moment I thought she would scold me. Instead she sighed, a long, weary sound. He was not always this way, child. Once, long ago, he was different. He laughed, they say. He loved. She shook her head. But that was before the curse. Before the crown became a cage. What curse? But she was already shuffling toward the door. I have said too much. Eat your food. She left. And I was alone again with my questions. A curse. A crown that was a cage. A king who used to laugh and love. And a girl who had looked him in the eye and somehow, impossibly made him feel seen. I looked at the door, the same door he had walked through last night. And for the first time, I didn't wonder when he would come back. I hoped he would. Part 3. The taste of freedom. He came back the next night. And the night after that. And the night after that. It became our ritual. I would pretend to sleep, listening for the soft sound of the door opening, the whisper of his breath. He would sit in the chair by the cold hearth and simply watch me. At first, I would eventually open my eyes and look at him, and we would talk in hushed voices until I grew tired again. But as the nights passed, I stopped pretending. I would sit up when he arrived, pull the furs around me, and wait. He would sit in the chair, and I would sit on the bed, and we would talk. I learned that his castle was empty because he had ordered everyone away centuries ago. He couldn't stand their fear, their trembling, their averted eyes. Only Elara remained, a distant cousin who was too old and too stubborn to be afraid of him. I learned that he could feel the emotions of every wolf in his territory. Every fear, every joy, every pain. It was part of the curse of being king. He was connected to all of them, but he could never be one of them. He felt their lives, but he could never live his own. It's like screaming into a void and hearing nothing but your own echo, he said one night, his voice rough with an old pain. You're surrounded by millions of hearts beating, and you are completely, utterly alone. I told him about my life in the pack, about the small cruelties and the casual indifference, about my parents, who had died when I was young, leaving me with no one, about learning to be small, to be quiet, to take up as little space as possible so no one would notice me and make my life even harder. I know how to be invisible, I said. I've been invisible my whole life. But you're the opposite. You're so visible that no one can see you at all. They just see the crown, the power, the monster they've invented. He looked at me then with those silver eyes, and I saw something flicker in their depths. Something raw and vulnerable. You see me, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I whispered. I see you. The air between us thickened. The distance from the bed to the chair felt like a chasm, but also like nothing at all. I could feel the pull of him, a strange magnetic force that made my skin tingle and my heart race. He stood up abruptly, his jaw tight. I should go. Why? He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of frustration that looked strangely human. Because I don't trust myself to stay. My breath caught. What do you mean? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than loneliness in his eyes. I saw hunger, not the hunger of a beast for prey, but the hunger of a man for a woman. It sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. You know what I mean, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. I can smell you, Arya. I can smell your warmth, your softness, your life. Every night I sit here, and every night it gets harder to stay in this chair. I should have been frightened. I should have pulled the furs tighter, told him to leave, protected myself. But I wasn't frightened. I was thrilled, alive. For the first time in my life, someone wanted me. Not as a sacrifice, not as an omega, but as a woman. What if I don't want you to go? The words came out before I could stop them, soft and trembling. He went completely still. The air in the room seemed to freeze. You don't know what you're saying, he said finally. Then tell me, I challenged him, surprising myself. Tell me what I'm saying. He moved then, so fast I didn't see it. One moment he was by the chair. The next he was at the edge of my bed, looming over me. His silver eyes blazed, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I am not a man, Arya, he said, his voice a dangerous whisper. I am a Lycan king. If I took you, if I claimed you, there would be no going back. You would be mine, completely, irrevocably. And the pack that sent you here, the world that cast you out, they would all know it. They would know that the king chose an Omega, that he chose you. I stared up at him, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And what if I want to be chosen? The growl that rumbled from his chest was deep and primal. His hand came up, and I flinched again. But again, he didn't hurt me. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, featherlight, sending sparks of electricity across my skin. You are a temptation I have not felt in 1,000 years, he murmured, his thumb brushing over my lower lip. You make me want to be a man again. You make me want to be something I forgot I could be. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering closed. It was the first time anyone had ever touched me with tenderness. The first time anyone had made me feel precious. But then he pulled away. He stepped back from the bed, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. Not like this, he said hoarsely. Not while you are still a prisoner. Not while you have no choice. And before I could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. I sat in the darkness, my skin still tingling where he had touched me, my heart a chaotic mess of confusion and desire. He wanted me. The king wanted me. But he wouldn't take me. Not while I was trapped. What would happen, I wondered, if I wasn't a prisoner anymore? What would happen if I could choose him freely? The next day, I asked Ilara to take me to him. She refused. The king did not receive visitors. He sent for people when he wished to see them. So I waited. But I didn't wait patiently. I waited with a new fire in my heart, a new purpose. I was no longer the passive sacrifice. I was a woman who had been seen, touched, wanted. And I would not go back to being invisible. When he came that night, I was ready. I was sitting in the chair by the hearth, the one he always used. I was wearing the best dress Ilara had brought me, a deep blue that matched the darkest part of the sky. My hair was brushed and fell in waves around my shoulders. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flickering across his features. "You're in my chair," he said. "I know." I stood up, my heart hammering but my voice steady. "I want to go outside." He raised an eyebrow. "Outside?" "Yes. I've been in this room for weeks. I want to see the sky. I want to feel the wind. I took a deep breath. "I want to walk with you. Not as a prisoner. Not as a sacrifice, just as Arya, with you." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, that almost smile touched his lips. "You are the most fearless creature I have ever met," he said. "I'm not fearless," I admitted. "I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life in that bed, wondering what might have happened if I'd had the courage to ask for more." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped in front of me. He was so close I could feel the heat of him, could see the individual silver flecks in his eyes. "If we go outside," he said quietly, "everything changes. The pack will know. The world will know. There will be no hiding, no going back. They will see you with me, and they will never see you as an Omega again. They will see you as mine." I lifted my chin, just as I had on that first day in the courtyard. "Good." His eyes flared, and then he smiled. A real smile this time. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less like a king and more like a man. He offered me his hand. I took it without hesitation. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. "Come then, Arya," he said. "Let me show you my mountain." He led me through the dark corridors, but this time I wasn't afraid. His hand was wrapped around mine, a solid anchor in the shadows. We climbed a winding stone staircase, and at the top, he pushed open a heavy door. The night air hit me like a wave, cold and sweet and alive. I gasped, not from the cold, but from the beauty. We were on the highest tower of the castle. Above us, the sky blazed with more stars than I had ever seen, a river of silver light stretching from one horizon to the other. Below us, a mountain fell away into darkness, the lights of distant packs twinkling like earthbound stars. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "I come here every night," he said, his voice soft beside me. "It's the only place I feel less alone." I turned to look at him, and in the starlight he was breathtaking. The hard planes of his face were softened by the silver glow, and his eyes held the light of 1,000 moons. "You're not alone anymore," I said. He looked down at me, and something shifted in his gaze. Something deep and ancient and achingly human. "No," he agreed, his voice rough. "I'm not." And then, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, he leaned down. His lips brushed against mine, soft as a whisper, gentle as a prayer. It was the sweetest kiss I had ever known, and it set my entire world on fire. Part 4. The Jealousy of Kings. That kiss changed everything. After that night on the tower, the walls around my room came down literally. I was no longer confined to that small space. I could roam the castle freely, explore the dark corridors, discover forgotten libraries and empty halls. But I didn't want to explore alone. I wanted to explore with him, and he wanted the same. We spent every moment together after that. He showed me his world, the places that mattered to him, the secrets the castle held. There was a hidden garden in the inner courtyard, shielded from the wind, where moonlight flowers bloomed only at night. There was a library filled with books so old the pages crumbled at a touch, histories of pacts and kings and wars long forgotten. There was a training ground where he had once sparred with warriors, now silent and empty. He told me stories as we walked, about his childhood before the crown, about his father, the previous king, who had been cold and distant, about his mother, who had died when he was young, the only person who had ever looked at him without fear. "Dante," I whispered one night, lying beside him on a fur rug in front of a roaring fire. "That's your name, isn't it?" He went still beside me. I felt his body tense, his muscles coiling. "How do you know that?" His voice was careful, controlled. "Elara told me you used to have a name." I guessed. I turned my head to look at him. "It suits you." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he let out a breath, a sound that was almost a laugh. "No one has spoken that name in 500 years. Dante," I said again, testing it on my tongue. "I like it. It's strong. It's beautiful." He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at me. The firelight played across his features, casting dancing shadows across his sharp cheekbones. "You are the only one who has ever called me by that name and meant it as a gift," he said softly. I reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "You are the only one who has ever looked at me and seen something worth keeping." He caught my hand and pressed a kiss to my palm. "I see everything in you, Aria. Everything I forgot I was missing." The weeks that followed were the happiest of my life. We explored, we talked, we learned each other. He told me about the curse that bound him to the crown, how he could feel every wolf in his territory, their emotions washing over him like waves. It was why he isolated himself. The constant input was overwhelming, and the only relief was solitude. I told him about my parents, about the small memories I held onto my mother's laugh, my father's strong hands, about learning to be invisible, to survive, about Marta, the old woman who had told me to look him in the eye. "She saved my life," I said. "She didn't know it, but she did." "She gave you the key," he agreed. "But you were the one brave enough to use it." One night, as we lay together under the stars on the tower, he grew quiet. I felt the change in him, the tension creeping back into his shoulders. "What is it?" I asked. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "There is something I haven't told you." I sat up, my heart suddenly pounding. "What?" "The tithe. The sacrifice." He wouldn't look at me. "It was never about killing you. It was about choosing a mate." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "What?" He sat up too, running a hand through his hair in that gesture of frustration I had come to know. "The old law. The blood tithe. It was a way for the packs to offer their daughters to the king. A way for the king to choose a queen. But over the centuries, as the kings grew more isolated, more feared, the meaning changed. The daughters stopped coming willingly. They started coming as sacrifices. And the kings, they stopped choosing. They just let them die." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Let them die? How?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were filled with a pain so deep it took my breath away. The cold, the isolation. They were left in the courtyard, and if they survived the night, they were brought inside. But none of them ever did. They died of fear, of exposure, of broken hearts. The kings, we let them, because it was easier than facing them, easier than risking rejection. I thought of that first night, standing in the freezing courtyard, waiting to die. "I survived," I whispered. "Yes." His voice was rough. "You survived. And then you looked at me. And I couldn't let you go. I didn't know what to feel. Anger that I had been sent to die for a purpose I didn't understand. Relief that I had somehow passed a test I didn't know I was taking. Fear that this whole thing was just tradition? Is that what this is? I asked, my voice small. Tradition? The king choosing his mate? He reached for me, cupping my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. No, this is not tradition. This is not duty. This is you, Arya. Only you. I would have chosen you if you had been a servant or a princess or a rogue from the mountains. I would have chosen you if there was no law, no tithe, no crown. I would have chosen you in any world, in any life. Tears pricked at my eyes. How can you be sure? Because for the first time in 1,000 years, I feel something other than loneliness. For the first time in 1,000 years, I want to live. Not just exist. Live. With you. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into that kiss, my fear, my hope, my love. Because I did love him. Somewhere between the night visits and the tower talks and the walks through empty halls, I had fallen in love with the king who was lonely, the man who was cursed, the wolf who had seen me and refused to let me go. But our happiness was not meant to last. It started with a change in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Dante grew restless, distracted. He would stop mid-sentence, his eyes going distant, his body tensing. What is it? I would ask. Nothing, he would lie. Just the pack. Their emotions are agitated. I didn't believe him. Something was wrong. Then, one night, as we sat in the library, the door burst open. Elara stood there, her wrinkled face ashen, her black eyes wide with fear. Forgive the intrusion, my king, she gasped. But there is someone at the gate. An Alpha. He demands entrance. Dante was on his feet instantly, his body shifting, growing. For the first time, I saw the wolf beneath his skin, the power barely contained. Who? Alpha Kale, of the Shadowfang pack. I didn't recognize the name, but Dante's reaction told me everything I needed to know. His silver eyes blazed with something I had never seen before. Jealousy. He has no authority here, Dante growled. He has no right. He claims he does, Elara said carefully. He claims the girl. He says she was promised to him before the tithe. The world stopped. Promised to him? Me? Dante turned to me, and the look in his eyes was feral, possessive, dangerous. Is this true? I shook my head frantically. I don't know anyone named Kale. I was never promised to anyone. I was an Omega. No one wanted me. Someone wanted you, Dante said, his voice a low snarl. Someone just didn't bother to tell you. He strode toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, what are you going to do? He looked down at me, and for a moment, the man I loved was buried beneath the king. The Lycan. The predator. I'm going to remind him exactly who he's challenging. No, I held on tighter. Take me with you. His eyes widened. Absolutely not. If this is about me, I have a right to be there. I have a right to face him. To tell him myself that I belong to no one. The word hung in the air between us. Belong. It was the first time I had said it, the first time I had admitted it out loud. Dante's expression softened, just slightly. You belong to yourself, Arya. That is the only truth. But if you want to come, you will stay behind me. You will not speak. You will not move. You will not give him any reason to think he can reach you. I nodded, my heart pounding. Together, we walked through the corridors, down the winding stairs, across the courtyard where I had first arrived. The iron gate loomed ahead, and beyond it, I could see a figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that glowed gold even in the darkness. Alpha Kale. The gate opened, and Dante stepped forward, positioning himself between me and the stranger. I stayed close behind him, but I could see over his shoulder. Kale was handsome in a brutal way, all sharp edges and coiled violence. His eyes swept past Dante and locked onto me. And what I saw in them made my blood run cold. Hunger, possession, and something else. Recognition. "There you are," he said, his voice a silky purr. "I've been looking for you, little Omega." Dante's growl rumbled through the night air. A sound of pure menace. "She is not yours to look for." Kale smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf who has found a weakness. "Oh, but she is. Her parents promised her to me before they died. A debt unpaid. A vow unfulfilled." I felt the world tilt beneath me. My parents. They had promised me to someone and never told me. "That's not true," I whispered. But even as I said it, I remembered my father's worried conversations, my mother's tears. I remembered the stranger who had visited our cottage once, years ago, and the fear in their eyes after he left. Dante must have felt my shock, my doubt. He reached back and grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly. "It doesn't matter what was promised," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "She is under my protection now. She was sent as a tithe, and the tithe is complete. She belongs to this castle, to this mountain, to me." Kale's smile didn't waver. The tithe was for a sacrifice, not a queen. "The packs are talking, my king. They say you've broken tradition. They say you've claimed an Omega, the lowest of the low, and made her your consort. They say you've lost your mind. Let them talk. They're doing more than talking." Kale stepped closer, and I saw Dante's muscles coil, ready to strike. "They're gathering, challenging, questioning your right to rule. King who puts an Omega above his people is a king who doesn't deserve his crown." The words hit Dante like physical blows. I felt him flinch, felt the uncertainty ripple through him. "I don't care about the crown," he said quietly. "You should." Kale's eyes flicked to me again, and this time there was triumph in them. "Because without it, you're just a wolf. And wolves can be challenged. Wolves can be killed." The implication was clear. If Dante lost his crown, he lost his protection. And I lost him. Kale took another step forward, ignoring Dante's warning growl. "I'm not here to fight you tonight, my king. I'm here to offer you a choice. Give me the girl and I'll calm the packs. I'll tell them the king has seen reason, that the Omega was never truly claimed. Your crown stays secure. Your rule continues. Everyone wins. And if I refuse..." Kale's smile widened. "Then you'll have a war on your hands. Not just from me, but from every alpha who thinks you've lost your edge. Every pack that thinks the Lycan King has gone soft over a girl." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, crushing me. A war, over me. Over an Omega no one had wanted until suddenly everyone did. Dante's hand tightened on mine. I could feel him struggling, could feel the war inside him. His duty to his people, his love for me, his fear of losing either. I opened my mouth to speak, to tell him to choose wisely, to save himself, to let me go. But before I could say a word, Kale spoke again. "Think carefully, my king. Is one woman worth the blood of thousands?" And with that, he turned and walked back into the darkness, leaving us standing in the open gateway, the weight of his question hanging in the air between us. Part 5. The Choice. The days after Kale's visit were the darkest of my life. Dante pulled away from me. Not physically, he still came to my room at night. Still held me close. Still kissed me with a desperate tenderness that broke my heart. But emotionally, he retreated behind walls I couldn't breach. He was thinking, weighing, calculating, and I knew what the answer would be. I couldn't blame him. He was a king. He had responsibilities that went far beyond one girl from a low-ranking pack. If war came because of me, thousands would die. Families would be destroyed. Packs would be shattered. All because Dante had refused to give up his Omega. How could I ask him to carry that weight? How could I let him? Alara found me one afternoon in the library, staring at a book I wasn't reading. She sat down across from me, her ancient eyes sharp and knowing. "You're thinking of leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. I looked at her, startled. "How did you—" "I've lived a long time, child. I know the look of someone preparing to sacrifice themselves." She shook her head slowly. "It's the same look he had 500 years ago, when he first took the crown." "What do you mean?" She sighed, a long, weary sound. "He didn't want this, you know. The crown. The curse. His father died in a war, and Dante was the only heir. He took the throne to save his people from chaos. He gave up everything, his freedom, his happiness, his name, because it was his duty. And he's been paying for it ever since." I felt tears prick at my eyes. He's been alone for 500 years because of duty. Because of duty. Because of sacrifice. Because he put his people before himself. She reached across and took my hand, her papery skin warm against mine. "And now, for the first time in all those centuries, he's found something that makes him want to be selfish. Something that makes him want to choose himself." "Me," I whispered. "You," she squeezed my hand. "If you leave, if you go with that Alpha, you'll destroy him. Not his crown, he could lose that and survive. But you? Losing you would break something in him that can never be fixed." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to stay, to fight, to be selfish with him. But Cale's words echoed in my head. "Is one woman worth the blood of thousands?" "I can't let people die for me," I said, my voice cracking. "I can't, and he can't let you go," Alara said gently. "So what will you do?" I didn't have an answer. That night, Dante came to my room, but he didn't sit in the chair. He didn't lie on the bed. He stood by the window, the one window in the castle that actually looked out at the mountain, and stared into the darkness. I went to him, wrapping my arms around him from behind, pressing my cheek to his back. He was tense, his muscles rigid beneath my touch. "I can feel them," he said quietly. "The packs, their anger, their fear, their hunger for blood. It's like a million voices screaming in my head." "I'm sorry," I whispered. He turned in my arms, pulling me close, burying his face in my hair. "Don't be sorry, just don't leave me." My heart shattered. The Lycan King, the most powerful creature in the world, begging me not to leave him. "I don't want to," I admitted. "But I can't watch you destroy yourself for me. It's my choice to make, and it's my choice to protect you, even if it means protecting you from yourself." He pulled back, his silver eyes blazing in the darkness. "If you go with Cale, he'll claim you. He'll mark you. You'll be his body and soul forever. Do you understand that?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "And do you understand that I will hunt him to the ends of the earth? That I will tear apart anyone who tries to keep you from me? That I will burn the world down to get you back? Dante, I will." His voice was fierce, desperate. "I have been alone for 500 years. I have been nothing, felt nothing, wanted nothing. And then you came. You looked at me. You saw me. You loved me. And I cannot go back to that emptiness. If you leave, I will follow. If he takes you, I will find you. There is nowhere in this world or any other where I will stop looking for you." I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into that kiss, my love, my fear, my hope, my despair. He kissed me back with equal fervor, his hands cupping my face, my hair, my body, as if he could memorize me through touch alone. "I love you." I gasped against his lips. "I love you so much it hurts." "Then stay," he begged. "Fight with me. Trust me to find another way." I wanted to. Moon above, I wanted to. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw the weight he carried, The centuries of loneliness, the curse that bound him to his people. And I knew that if I stayed and war came, he would never forgive himself. The blood would be on his hands, and it would poison everything we had. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes love means sacrifice. I made my choice. The next night, when Dante was called away to deal with a border skirmish probably, arranged by Kale to get me alone, I went to the gate. Alara was there, waiting for me, her eyes filled with tears. "Child," she said softly, "don't do this. I have to. He will never forgive himself. He will think he failed you. Then you have to make him understand. You have to tell him that this was my choice, my sacrifice, my gift to him." I hugged her tightly, feeling her frail body shake with sobs. Then I walked through the gate. Kale was waiting in the trees, just beyond the castle's protection. He smiled when he saw me, that predatory smile that made my skin crawl. "I knew you'd come," he said. "You Omegas are all the same. So eager to please. So desperate to sacrifice yourselves for others." "I'm not eager," I said coldly. "I'm doing this to save him. That's the only reason. He doesn't deserve your loyalty. You don't deserve to speak his name." Kale's smile flickered. Just for a moment. Then he grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and pulled me toward the path leading down the mountain. "Let's go, little Omega. You have a new pack now. A new Alpha. And I promise you by the time I'm done, you won't even remember his name." I looked back once at the dark castle silhouetted against the starry sky. At the tower where we had shared our first kiss. At the walls that had held me prisoner and then set me free. "I love you, Dante," I thought. "I love you enough to let you go." And then I turned away and walked into the darkness. Part 6. The Queen of Ashes. Kale's camp was a nightmare. He didn't take me to his packlands, not right away. Instead, he kept me in a tent in the forest, surrounded by his warriors. They watched me constantly, their eyes hungry and cruel. I was a prize, a trophy, the Omega who had caught a king's eye and was now being used against him. Kale visited me every night. He didn't touch me, not yet. He was waiting for something. The right moment, maybe. Or maybe he was just savoring the anticipation. "You know," he said one night, circling me like the predator he was, "I never actually wanted you. Your parents owed me a debt, and I intended to collect. But when I heard the king had claimed you, when I realized what you meant to him, you became so much more valuable." I stared at the ground, refusing to look at him. "You're using me to hurt him." "Of course I am. He's been untouchable for 1,000 years. No weaknesses, no vulnerabilities, no cracks in the armor. Until you." He crouched in front of me, grabbing my chin and forcing me to meet his eyes. "Do you have any idea what it's like, being an alpha under a king like that? He's so powerful, so ancient, so far beyond us that we might as well be ants. We exist at his pleasure. We breathe because he allows it. And now, finally, I have something he wants. Something he'll do anything to get back. He won't trade his crown for me." "No," Kale agreed. "But he'll trade his sanity. He'll trade his control. He'll come for you. And when he does, he'll be reckless, angry, desperate. And that's when I'll strike." I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I wanted to believe Dante was too smart, too strong, too controlled to fall for such a trap. But deep down I knew. Dante would come. He had promised. And Kale would be waiting. The days blurred together. I lost track of time, of night and day. I ate when they shoved food at me, slept when exhaustion overtook me. I held on to my memories like talismans. Dante's smile, his touch, his voice calling my name. They were all I had. And then, one night, everything changed. I woke to chaos. Shouting, growling, the clash of battle. The tent flap ripped open, and I saw warriors running past, their faces twisted with fear. And above it all, I heard a sound I had only heard once before. A howl. Deep, powerful, earth-shaking. The howl of a lichen king. Dante. I scrambled to my feet and ran to the tent entrance. The camp was in flames. Warriors fought and died in the firelight. And in the center of it all, a massive wolf stood, larger than any creature had a right to be. His fur was black as night. His eyes blazed silver, and his jaws dripped with blood. Dante, he saw me. Even in the chaos, even surrounded by enemies, his eyes found mine. And in that moment I knew. He had come. He had burned the world down to get to me. Kale appeared behind me, grabbing my arm, yanking me back. "Stay where I can see you," he snarled. "You're my insurance." But I wasn't his anything. I was no one's sacrifice anymore. I twisted in his grip, bringing my knee up with all the force I could muster. It wasn't much. I was weak from captivity, but it was enough to make him grunt and loosen his hold. I tore free and ran toward the massive black wolf, ran toward my king, ran toward my love. Dante shifted as I approached, the change rippling through him in a heartbeat. One moment he was a wolf, the next he was a man, naked and bloodied and beautiful. He caught me in his arms, crushing me against his chest. "You came," I sobbed. "You came for me. I will always come for you." His voice was rough, broken. "Always. Don't you ever doubt that. Don't you ever leave me again." Behind us, Kale screamed in rage. I turned to see him charging toward us, his own wolf form emerging, teeth bared for the kill. Dante pushed me behind him and shifted again, faster than thought. The two wolves collided in a fury of teeth and claws, a battle that shook the very ground. I watched, my heart in my throat, as they fought. Kale was strong, but Dante was the Lichen King, ancient, powerful, furious. It ended quickly. One moment Kale was snapping and snarling. The next he was on his back, Dante's jaws clamped around his throat. A whimper. A plea for mercy. Dante looked at me, one question in his silver eyes. Should I end him? I thought about everything Kale had done. The manipulation, the captivity, the threat to everything I loved. But I also thought about the blood that would spill if he died. The war it would start. The packs that would rise up to avenge their alpha. And I thought about the girl I used to be. The Omega who was invisible, who never mattered, who had no power. She would have wanted him dead. She would have wanted revenge. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I shook my head. Dante released Kale's throat, but not before leaning close and growling something in his ear. I didn't hear the words, but I saw Kale's eyes widen with fear. Whatever Dante had said, it was worse than death. Dante shifted back to human form and walked to me, pulling me into his arms. Around us, the fighting had stopped. Kale's warriors, seeing their alpha defeated, had surrendered. The camp was quiet except for the crackle of flames and the moans of the wounded. "It's over," Dante said softly. "It's finally over." But it wasn't. Not really. Because as we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, a new sound rose on the night air. Howling, not one wolf, but many. Dozens. Hundreds. Coming from all directions. Dante's body went rigid. "No," he whispered. "No." I looked up at him, fear clawing at my heart. "What is it?" "The packs," he said, his voice hollow. "They're not just watching anymore. They're coming. All of them." I turned, and in the distance I saw them. Wolves pouring over the hills, descending from the mountains, emerging from the forests. Hundreds of wolves, their eyes glowing in the darkness. All converging on this spot. The war Kale had threatened. It was here. Dante looked down at me, and in his silver eyes I saw something I had never seen before. Fear, not for himself. For me. "I can't fight them all," he said quietly. "I can't protect you from all of them. I reached up and touched his face, just as I had that first night in my room. Then we fight together. He shook his head. If you stay, you'll die. If I lose, they'll tear you apart. I won't. Dante. I cut him off, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. I have been invisible my whole life. I have been a sacrifice, a prisoner, a pawn. But with you, I was a queen. Even if it was only for a little while. That's worth dying for. His eyes blazed. No, you're worth living for. The wolves were getting closer. I could see their individual forms now. Could hear their snarls and growls. Dante pulled me close, pressing his forehead to mine. I love you, Arya. In all my 1,000 years, you were the only thing that ever mattered. The only thing that ever felt real. I love you too, I whispered. My king, my Dante. He kissed me then, a fierce, desperate kiss that tasted of tears and blood and forever. And when he pulled back, there was a new light in his eyes. A terrible, beautiful light. I am the Lycan King, he said, his voice rising, carrying on the night air. I have ruled for 1,000 years. I have bled for this crown, suffered for it, sacrificed everything for it. And now, finally, I have something worth keeping. Something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. He turned to face the approaching horde, pulling me close against his side. If you want war, he roared, his voice shaking the very mountains, then you will have it. But know this, I will not go quietly. I will not surrender. And I will take as many of you with me as I can. Because she is my queen, my mate, my heart. And I will protect her with every breath in my body, every drop of blood in my veins, every ounce of power in my soul. The wolves paused at the edge of the clearing. Hundreds of glowing eyes stared at us. I could feel their hunger, their anger, their bloodlust. And then, something extraordinary happened. A wolf at the front of the pack shifted. A woman, tall and strong, with hair the color of autumn leaves. She walked forward, her eyes fixed on us. The king speaks of love, she said, her voice carrying clearly. I have never heard a king speak of love before. I have heard of power, of duty, of blood and battle, but never love. She stopped a few feet away, studying us with an unreadable expression. If he loves her enough to die for her, she continued, then perhaps he is worthy of ruling after all. Perhaps we have forgotten what a king should be. Not a tyrant, not a monster, but a protector, one who loves his people enough to sacrifice everything for them. Another wolf shifted, then another. Soon, a dozen wolves stood before us in human form, their expressions thoughtful. The Alpha speaks wisely, one of them said. We came here for blood. We came here to challenge. But looking at them, I see something I have never seen before. I see two people who would die for each other. Is that not what we all want? Is that not what a pack should be? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The bloodlust was fading, replaced by something else. Something I hardly dared to hope for. Understanding. Dante stepped forward, still holding me close. I have ruled from the shadows for too long, he said, his voice quieter now, but no less powerful. I have hidden behind these walls, afraid of connection, afraid of pain. But she taught me that love is not weakness. It is strength. It is the only thing worth having, worth fighting for, worth dying for. If you want a king who understands that, who feels that, who will protect his people with that same fierce love, then I am your king. Not because of my blood, not because of my power, but because I have finally learned what it means to truly care for someone other than myself. The silence stretched, agonizing and eternal. Then the woman with autumn hair stepped forward and knelt. I pledge my loyalty, she said, to the king who loves, to the queen who inspires that love. One by one, The others knelt. Warriors, alphas, pack members from a dozen different clans. They knelt in the blood-soaked earth, their eyes raised to us, and they pledged themselves. It was over. The war that had threatened to consume us had become something else entirely. A beginning. Dante turned to me, his eyes shining with tears. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." I laughed, a sound of pure joy and relief. "We did it together." He kissed me again. And this time it wasn't desperate or fearful.
In your arms, my king.
It was hopeful, joyful, full of promise. And as the wolves around us howled their acceptance, their loyalty, their love, I knew that I had finally found my place. Not as a sacrifice, not as an omega, not as a prisoner, but as a queen, his queen. Conclusion. A value-based reflection. So now you know the story of Arya and Dante.
In your arms, my king.
A girl who was sent up a mountain to die, and a king who refused to let her. But as you sit there, thinking about everything they went through, I want you to consider something. This story isn't really about werewolves or kings or magical curses. It's about something much closer to home. It's about the masks we all wear. Think about it. Dante spent 1,000 years hiding behind his crown, his power, his reputation as a monster. Why? Because it was easier than being seen, easier than risking connection, easier than admitting he was lonely. He let the world believe he was something terrible, because that belief protected him from the pain of rejection. And Arya? She spent her whole life making herself small, invisible, unnoticeable. She accepted her place at the bottom of the pack because it was safer than hoping for more, safer than reaching for something better and being denied. They were both prisoners, not of the castle or the pack, but of the stories they told themselves about who they were. Here's the question I want to leave you with. What story are you telling yourself? Are you telling yourself you're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough? Are you hiding behind a mask of toughness or indifference or self-reliance? Because it's safer than letting anyone see the real you. Because here's the truth that Arya and Dante learned, the hard way. The only way to be truly seen is to risk being truly known. Arya looked a king in the eye when every instinct told her to look away. She risked everything on the chance that there was a man behind the monster. And because she took that risk, she didn't just save herself. She saved him too. Dante let himself be seen. He let down the walls he'd built over 1,000 years, let someone past all the defenses, let himself feel again. And because he took that risk, he didn't just find love. He found himself. The packs outside the castle walls learned something that night too. They learned that power without love is just tyranny. That strength without connection is just loneliness. That a king who cares is worth more than 1,000 tyrants who don't. So I'll ask you again, what mask are you hiding behind? And who might you become if you had the courage to take it off? The girl who walked up that mountain to die thought her life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. Because she had the courage to look, to see, to risk. You have that same courage. You've always had it. You just haven't needed it yet. But someday you will. Someday, someone will look at you the way Arya looked at Dante, and you'll have a choice. Look away, or look back. Choose wisely. It might just change your life.